And then there's even some awesome like adders on top of that. So you can get more than 30% tax credit using a certain percentage of American-made steel, iron, manufactured products, and things like that.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Let's talk about then the Inflation Reduction Act, and this is a bit more political, but I do think that there's I think that it's important to have maybe a clear-eyed view of actually what it does. And I sent you the first thing that made me think, oh, okay, I want to get Daniel on, and it ended up probably we'll spend the least amount of time on this, but that's fine. We had a lot of other good stuff to talk about. Twinkle Cavanaugh, our Public Service Commission president, had an article in Yellowhammer News about how this is a socialist boondoggle, the Inflation Reduction Act, and that's actually going to increase energy prices somehow. So can you work that out for us, Daniel?
I wish I could. In this particular case, you're looking at a bill here that does a lot in the energy sector. And I should note that, and we can talk more about it, some interesting labor provisions in here as well. Y'all are way smarter than I am on what these will mean at the end of the day. But if you look at the bill as a whole, it is more than paying for itself. So any money that's being spent by the federal government for, say, tax credits for renewable energy or electric vehicles or things like that to help us reduce fossil fuel consumption or increase production, period, because we're going to need more juice with more EVs and things out there. It's being paid for and then some. So I'm not really sure how we get to a world where this is a boondoggle that is going to increase our costs. That just is completely divorced from reality. But
well, not only is it paid for, I mean, like it's paid for and a half. Like it raises $700 billion in revenue, and it only spends something like $350 billion. There's $300 or $400 billion going to deficit reduction, which I think probably is not particularly helpful. But whatever. If it got Manchin to sign on to it, then fine, I guess. But I can't understand. I don't understand even how. I don't even understand the theoretical argument about what energy provisions are in there that would hypothetically increase costs. It just seems to me like, oh, it's a Democratic bill. I'm going to pretend like it's bad. Yeah.
I would say that, there is, again, that position is divorced from reality.
Tell us then about the reality. As soon as you finish that point, then what are the energy provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act?
Yeah, I was going to say that even if you believed that this was like, say there wasn't going to reduce the deficit, or that wasn't paid for, from the state level and down, like, okay, well, let's just assume that were the case. Like, that's a federal problem that the federal government's going to have to fix. From an Alabama power ratepayer and Alabama Public Service Commission standpoint, these are still credits that are going to reduce the cost to do things. And that can be for Alabama Power to do things. That can be for consumers to do things. And so at the end of the day, even if this bill were not paid for, which it is, or that it wasn't even paid for in the half, which it is, it would still be reducing the cost of new energy supplies. So that's why the theoretical argument is so hard for you to understand, because it's so hard for me to understand. Like, these are things that, by their very definition, reduce the cost of acquiring new energy sources. So it's, again, just divorced from reality. It's political grandstanding, but par for the course for this commission.
Right. So what are some of the energy provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few that I thought were pretty interesting that I wanted to bring up today, and that is, it's an extension of tax credits for renewable energy. Most people are familiar with a solar tax credit or a wind production tax credit. So there's a variety of provisions in there that will extend those credits, eventually make them technology agnostic. So basically, as long as there's zero carbon, credits, go out. There's also some credits in there for nuclear power plants, especially those that are economically disadvantaged, to keep them online. That's another thing important to the labor community. One thing that I wanted to mention from a labor perspective is that I feel very strongly about is that this has been a critique of the renewable energy industry, and rightfully so, that it has not been a very organized area of the economy. And so a lot of people would say, well, why do I want to lose good union paying jobs in one industry to prop up another industry that doesn't have that? And this is the first time I think I've seen where these credits are being tied to different levels of Buy American provisions, different levels of apprenticeship and prevailing wage. So for instance, the 30% tax credit for solar and wind and things like that would actually drop to just a 6% credit based on what I'm reading if prevailing wages and apprenticeship targets are not met. Now, of course, there's some interesting talk there about, well, who's going to enforce this? And I don't necessarily have all the answers to that type of thing. But in order to get the full tax credit, companies are going to have to be paying prevailing wage. They're going to have apprenticeship programs. And then there's even some awesome adders on top of that. So you can get more than 30% tax credit for using a certain percentage of American made steel, iron, manufactured products and things like that. If you're working in a community that's been disadvantaged by the reduction in the coal workforce, you get an extra credit on top of that. If it's for low income houses or low income communities, you get a credit even on top of that. So they have been thoughtful in thinking, how do we make sure that these credits are going to projects that are paying good wages, that are building a good workforce for the long haul, and delivering benefits to the people who need them the most, the communities that have been hit hardest so far, and those that are struggling with the highest burdens and utility bills. So I'm not saying this is going to solve all the problems. It's definitely not. But this is the first piece of legislation I've ever seen address those issues in clean energy, and that makes me very happy to see.
Yeah, and I was not aware of several of those. I know that you were soliciting some stuff from folks on Twitter, but I didn't catch a lot of that. That is some really, really fantastic stuff from somebody who has a particular interest in organized labor. But even as a lot of these things that you were talking about, they benefit workers whether or not they are in unions. Prevailing wage is whether or not you're in a union, you get prevailing wage on a prevailing wage contract. All of these things, it's not union specific. Of course, union contractors are going to have an easier time of doing that because they haven't been skating by on paying people starvation wages, and so they're going to be more used to paying people what they're worth, and it's going to be easier for them to kind of swallow that. But they don't have to be a union contractor to get these benefits. They just have to pay people, good things and teach them well. This is something that people really don't understand. I think that aren't familiar with trades work is that my understanding is that non-union contractors, to the extent that they have apprenticeship programs, they are teach to the task. You don't really become a tradesman. You might become well-skilled in whatever particular job you are going to be working for that contractor, but you will not become a skilled electrician. You as a craft, you will not become a skilled ironworker. You will not become a skilled pipe fitter. Whereas these union apprenticeship programs and these apprenticeship programs that are Department of Labor certified, which are mostly union apprenticeship programs, which I'm assuming is the apprenticeship requirements that were tied to that, because it seems like that's normally what happens. Those are just categorically different than what you're going to get in non-union ABC contractors. So this is all really good stuff to hear, Daniel. I appreciate you coming on and talking to us about this.
Yeah, and I'll just say one more thing that on the electric vehicle side, they have removed the cap. General Motors and Tesla hit their cap, so there'll be a lot more vehicles that are eligible for the tax credit. And they also did the same thing. They broke the tax credit in two, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but half of the credit is available for vehicles under a certain price, and then trying to encourage more affordable vehicles to the masses, and then also encouraging assembly and sourcing of batteries and production of batteries and things like that in the U.S. So again, another good thing for workers here in the U.S.
That's awesome. All very good things to hear, Daniel. We appreciate your time. How can folks find out more?
Yeah, if you want to find out more about us, please go to energyalabama.org. We got plenty of stuff out on our website, and then we're on all the major social platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and especially snarky TikTok account. So at Energy Alabama.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.